So I've been in Iceland almost a year, and to complement, I guess it's changing somehow. What has been spoken of regarding Icelandic developments and also Matisse is that it's a very good test market. It's a country in its own. It's not like launching something in the United States or maybe a larger country. If it doesn't work, it's a big deal, but not necessarily as big of a deal as it might be in other regions. So, and the other thing is that in Iceland, there's a lot of good examples, and it really helps you think outside the box because we're working with so many other regions in the world. Iceland is actually closer to other countries than some might think. And that's been an emphasis for me because, you know, I can get to the US in about 5 hours. So regarding utilization of byproducts, it's truly a three-dimensional process. And in the past, I know that we've all worked with some kind of probably byproduct or aquaculture, feed, what have you. And sometimes you just dig in and you see what you can get. Well, now more than ever, we have a lot more information there, and we have markets. So it's very important to look at those markets and see where we can actually take our products, actually make an impact, and ideally make some profit. So I really like this quote because we're all scientists at heart, but we do need to look at the markets. So I don't want to be redundant, but I do find this schematic very helpful if people are to look at understanding aquaculture, feed, how we use our byproducts. It's all very interconnected. And what we're going to use the waste for. So regarding my presentation, processing waste is obviously a problem because if we're not using it, it costs us money or it's a problem for the environment. Regarding demand, if we're going to use the processing waste or byproducts for humans, for instance, we do need to look at sustainability. That's very important. But we also need to look at the fact that our population is growing and we need to feed our people. Now, regarding the fish oil and the meal, we all know that there's definitely a disadvantage when it comes to price. So how can we be more strategic using these ingredients? And one way to do that is to make functional marine ingredients out of those byproducts. And obviously, there's a lot of logistics involved, as we all know, whether it be mackerel or blue whiting, looking at yields, what are the properties that you're looking at, but then the logistics, production facilities, the raw material really makes a difference, environmental factors. So when really looking at all of these interconnected factors that go into the big puzzle, at the end of the day, logistics might not be as bad a thing when it comes to all the pricing and what kind of profit you can make. So where are the opportunities for value-added ingredients? There's a lot of areas, but some of the areas I want to focus on are dietary supplements, functional foods, sports nutrition, and the personal care market. We're all going towards sustainability, natural, unique. Does it have a funny name on the label? If it does, I don't know if we want to eat that. And obviously, it comes down to the cost. We're at, so with the sustainability and looking at the consumer and supply challenges, we do have to look at the internal businesses and how this affects the end customer, whoever we're working with. And obviously the big puzzle there, missing puzzle piece that we didn't necessarily look at decades ago was how do we market this? And have we done the analysis? And are we able to tell a story? So with our current market position with these byproducts. I know we've all asked several questions regarding this. How do we get it to market? What are our current challenges? And what is the positive view right now? There's a lot of them. Increasing consumer awareness, definitely people understanding what protein and bioactive sources are, ability to shape and drive the market. And then we always have the challenges. Obviously the R&D projects, clinical data, challenges, limited market know-how, and obviously cost. And there's a lot of aspects that drive the market, from both the product development factors, but also from the consumer perspective. So economics, demographics, regulatory is always a big thing, retailing, and then obviously, how do we market to the consumer? So general well-being is what everybody's looking at, followed by weight management, digestive health. I mean, we're in the billions of dollars, but everybody is realizing that we have to take better care of ourselves, and we are all concerned with preventative care and how can we better deal with risk factors. Sorry, I gotta get water. And there's so many other areas. This doesn't even cover them all. And fortified, functional, healthy food, by 2019, we're going to be hitting $350 billion. That's huge. And demographics are changing. Japan, China, et cetera. Very good examples of 65 and older, the population is increasing. So no longer is it maybe necessarily equal amongst the ages, but now we have people that are older and they're looking for ways to naturally treat themselves. And even the millennials. Millennials, everybody hears that word. It gets thrown around a lot. I'm not a millennial, but the younger generation does care about what they're eating. And this is very evident here. Venture capital activities with General Mills, Campbell's, as well as Kellogg's. And so we're in an area, there's a blurring of lines between pharmaceuticals and the niche markets, and it's all in the middle. It's now in that zone where you can sell it as a food, you could maybe sell it as a new dietary ingredient, pending the new regulations. There's a lot of flexibility and opportunity. So today I'm going to look at specific cases and market components of protein, peptides, omegas, BARF, which, does anybody know what this acronym stands for? Okay, good, we'll get to that. Snacks and flavors. So proteins, huge. They're at the top of the list for packaged food ingredients and beverages. Proteins are 44% of the global health ingredient market. And with seafood ingredients, it's going to increase. This is a study done by DuPont looking at consumption behaviors of when people are consuming their protein. So people are really paying attention to this. When I can get food, that's when I eat protein. And sports nutrition, this is just a huge category. The products that are expanding and making the money are those that include proteins. And the paleo diets, the gluten-free, vegan, that's also a huge aspect to the market. And another one that I learned about is biohackers. That's the term for people that test their DNA to see how the foods are affecting their markers in their blood. Also people that use Fitbits or watches, they're really trying to better control what's happening in their bodies. But that just sounds so scary to me. I don't know. Huh? Ah, he's a biohacker. Okay. And products are showing up on the market. I never would have thought beef protein, but they have 12 plus flavors of this product: strawberry, chocolate, fruit, probably peanut butter and jelly. I can't remember them all. Huh?
To feed your bison?
Yeah, exactly. But this is actually a Epic Meat Bar. I don't know if you've had it before, but this is a combination of some grains or seeds, but maybe some dried fruit, and then meat. Down below is a fish, almost like a potato chip, but it's made out of fish. It's called brekkie. It's made in the Faroese Islands, actually. And it's very good. It tastes like a potato chip. Oops, sorry. Sorry, Iceland. Sorry. The Nordic area. Thank you for the correction. So we all talk about the peptides, but the breadth of effects that these peptides can have is amazing. And the more we research, the more we isolate from byproducts, the more we'll know. Anything from anti-inflammatory to helping you absorb your calcium better, anticoagulant properties, antimicrobial properties. It's endless. One of the things that is being researched now is gut health with fish peptides and effects on the actual wall of your intestine. And the term that I've seen, which I hadn't seen until this year, it's cryptide. So these are just a few of the products on the market that address various health condition-specific categories. Hypertensive, obviously the sports nutrition, anti-stress, gastrointestinal health, joint health, beauty from within. It's huge, and they're from so many different species of product. And in my research and working on a lot of the projects that occur at Matisse, there's a lot of byproducts that do not have a lot of research yet behind them as to how we can process them. And who knows, maybe you could end up here. So this is an example of a product from whiting. It's made in France, and it's found to reduce body weight as well as increase lean body mass by affecting markers in your body that control your satiation or your hunger mechanism. Now, omegas. Everybody knows about omegas. Huge market. The biggest market is in North America, followed by Western Europe. It's being incorporated into so many products due to improving the functionality of the oils, the taste, ability to work with flavors, with Novozyme improving how things taste, how things look. And also, the other thing that's really pushing and increasing the marketability of these omegas is combining with other functional ingredients. And this is a key example with Mega Red. So has anyone heard about furin fatty acids? So I'm not the expert. We have an expert at Matisse, and they're actually working on some proprietary processes to isolate as well as test for these furin fatty acids. What they're finding is that these furin fatty acids are basically the antioxidant for the oil. It basically helps the oil maintain its antioxidative functional health properties. And what they're also finding is that in aquaculture fish, the quality of the feed that they're feeding the fish when it comes from fish meal is that it affects the content of these furan fatty acids in the fish that we might later consume. They've also done some recent studies in green-lipped mussel, and they're also finding these furan fatty acids. So this is something that could be used to market our fish oils in the future. There's a graph here on the right that looks at different sources of fish oil. And what you find in the soft gel, or sorry, I guess it disappeared. The soft gel should be very low, the level of furan fatty acids. But what they found is that with processing, oh, you see it? Oh, good. Okay. I thought it disappeared. Wouldn't be surprising if something else happened. But what they found is that processing degrades these furan fatty acids. So you're not getting the benefit that you could be getting if it was processed better, or you're using better value chain sources and processing. Omega-7 is another very big functional ingredient that's been well studied in the past, but is gaining more traction from an educational standpoint and also testing standpoint. Anchovy oil is very high in omegas. There are other fishes out there, but this is also another ingredient that you can really look at and maybe test for in your products that might be able to better sell your product. So again, combinations are huge with antioxidants, even proteins. They've found that combining oil with whey protein and things of that nature can actually help with absorption. And also can help potentially improve probiotic assimilation. So now I want to talk about flavors. Flavors, as we know, are big with fish. And with the savory market, or even with flavors in general, it's increasing incomes, demand for flavor, something that's richer, more tasty, something that helps us be more excited or find a food more palatable if it has a reduction in sugar, fat, or salt. Key areas of these flavor segments are snacks, dairy, confectionery, bakery, frozen, and on the next slide we'll talk about the savory snacks, which is where fish proteins or fish ingredients can really be applied. Also, we have educated consumers. They are concerned about what it looks like on the label and the regulations. So seafood flavors are very important for our snacks, our soups, our ready-to-eat meals, prepared noodles, our surimi. Big areas of push are in China, Indonesia, and Brazil. Flavors are huge, obviously in America. And westernization is a big driver also for these needs for tastier products and good flavors. But now we're in a place where we're using extracts, dehydrated products to make good claims from different species, but also even this company, they're actually looking at flavors to help make low fat claims, reduce salt, things of that nature. And big companies are acquiring these smaller companies because they know they are not going to be successful unless they buy into these flavors and the technologies that obviously these companies have. So Firmenich is a very good example. They have a base in Norway. They're the first flavor company to be MSC certified, and they process 10,000 tons of seafood yearly to make their seafood flavors. and the majority of that is from byproducts. And now they're developing B2B relationships with customers to go drive deeper into what these hydrolysates or byproducts can bring. And that's in the condition-specific development areas. Digestive health, blood glucose, satiety, and muscle health. And you can also see, I mean, they have a range of different flavor compounds from different species. So I don't think Flavorzyme was in here. I didn't see it in this article, but this is an example of, a recent example actually, from 2016 of a study by the Food Science and Technology article, is that by combining the fish protein hydrolysates, a source of sugar, and fish oil in some cases, you can get amazing levels or amazing compounds produced. And this actually doesn't even cover the entire list. So this is a good example that, albeit we have developed a lot of flavors from fish, we've only begun. And these are some other examples of usage of flavor from fish. This is an Icelandic example from North Marine Ingredients. They actually use a process that involves usage of cold adapted enzymes from cod. And it is a frozen extract. Another example, I did not know that this existed, but I think it's a neat concept, and you're basically paying for water and shipping, is that they're using the frames and the other byproducts to give you this broth from Alaska. I am from Alaska, by the way. So I thought that was pretty cool. Has anyone ever heard of N-Wave technology? So N-Wave could be an example of a technology that would help us get better flavor, better color, use less electricity, reduce our time in processing to give us something that's dried. So a dried fish. And I do have an example which I need to pull out of my backpack there. But this is very exciting. So, pet food. We've been talking a lot about aquaculture and pet food. It's very exciting. And actually, I get very excited by all of the products that are actually coming out, because it's like the human market, but now it's the pet food market. So we have humanized our pets. They are now part of our families, and we are addressing their food and their care the same as we would address ourselves. We're looking at grain-free, superfoods, raw foods, and we are really creating a premium market. And we're going sustainable. Mars, for instance, is a good example. So there's a lot of pet food out there, but there's a lot of opportunity for innovation and segmentation. And with the rise of millennials, the opportunities are endless. So, BARF, biologically appropriate raw food. When I first saw BARF, I thought, okay, I do not know what they're talking about, but I'm going to read about this. And actually, this is a bigger concept than I could have imagined, and I'll share that with you. So this is an example of a company in the US, Freshpet. They started a company in 2008, and they have experienced huge growth. And they basically have refrigerators that they've set up, and this product is being sold. It is raw food that can be frozen, it can be dried, it can be refrigerated, but you just store it and you can sell it. And byproducts are used in this. This is another example. This was actually in the September 2016 publication, and it's about Champion Pet Foods. They are specializing in barf. They have 2 centers, and they just recently opened up one in Kentucky. They have a goal to be the best in barf food, and they want it to be sustainable. And then I looked into the Nordic market, and lo and behold, there's a lot of this going on as well. This is an example. Byproduct could be 50 cents to $1 if you're looking at fish meal or fish oil. So they're basically selling byproduct for over $3 per kilo. And these kind of look like the snacks we eat in Iceland for humans. I'm not kidding you. So I could probably eat this. But this is actually from Alaska. They just launched this. And it's from human-grade trimmings. And they're just little snacks that dogs really enjoy. And it's in Costco. So this is becoming a byproduct human-pet revolution. And then here the other is cod skins as well for your pets. So when we're looking at our research, I think the exciting thing to look at is what are the opportunities, but also we just need to keep ourselves in check when it comes to the regulations, how are we going to market it? Has someone looked into the market segments so that you know where you're going? And obviously looking at the IPs, the health claims, the regulatory approvals, and unofficial certifications, whether it be gluten-free or something like that. So, to break it up, but also in alignment with markets relating to people in the industry, what research is out there, I'd like to show you a video. This is a great excuse to go to Iceland, but it's the World Seafood Congress. This is the Harpa. This is where it will be held. It's a beautiful convention center. If ideally you should come, which you should. And it does have a focus on the blue bioeconomy, which is great because we're going to talk about the research that's out there in general, innovation, seafood quality, safety, and integrity.
The World Seafood Congress will be a great melting point for industry, academia, and policymakers. We will focus on market innovation, safe seafood supply, and seafood integrity, and in particular, how technological disruption is shaping this great industry. Looking forward to seeing you in Iceland.
So to just quickly go over what the program entails, some policy, as well as looking at education, value chain, and I'm sorry that this is a little distorted. It went into a longer view than my normal presentation. The future of food, things like that. Market trends, supply chain, branding. How do you get to market? Also, Nordic examples. And we will be having some 3D printing exercises there as well. So that's another exciting thing, especially if we can use byproducts in that. 3D food printing, I should emphasize that. But then we also will have a special session on basically the future of our technologies. So if you do have questions about this, I am more than happy to entertain those. And thank you.
We have a very special tourist site in North Carolina. It's located about 4 hours west of here in Asheville. It's the largest private home in the United States, built by Vanderbilt over 100 years ago. And if you've ever toured a place like that, maybe you've been through places like this in Europe, after about an hour or two of going through there, it's just so much stuff, right? And I think we've had that this afternoon, so much stuff. So like, what are we going to talk about now? So let's have questions for Holly right now. And then if you have any for Horder or for Katie too, please bring those back.
On this question, I realize in some ways you're the messenger, but it's a question I want to get out there.
We're not going to kill you, though.
Thank you, Tyree. I keep worrying about all this research on hydrolyzates. Over the short term, you've got some of these products and some of these things, but as one makes the medical claims, the antioxidant claims, at some point, people are going to do the proper comparative studies. And you're going to have a few of these peptides that are going to be the best in class. And if they're really, really valuable, they're going to be synthesized.
Yes.
So in the long run, is this research in soy, in fish, in dairy, actually valuable to our food industries? Important for what their function is, but are we going about it backwards? Should we just be synthesizing them to start with and think about other uses for our byproducts?
I think it's good to start in the food direction because we need to understand how it's affecting us. If it is beneficial to our bodies or our systems or our fish, and then synthesize it. I think if we were to try to synthesize it, there's so many different combinations of peptides, you might miss the mark on the right one.
But you would do it more systematically.
Yes, and I mean, I've had some experience with this as well, is companies will say, well, we want to use this byproduct. Well, what peptide do we use? Well, you're going to have to start either at low molecular weights or at 10 kilodaltons and go down, and then test it in a populace as a food, and then send it to the pharmaceutical market if it is something that can compete with the other products out there. That's my 2 cents.
Katie, do you want to comment on that?
Well, I'll add one comment, but my thoughts are similar to Holly, that sometimes it's not just one peptide. So I know you're talking about a systematic approach, but you would have to find that combination of peptides too, that you're already getting in the...
What are you? You're fractionating. You're constantly fractionating. And so you're missing some of those also. And we're spending an awful lot of resources doing it in what is really a shotgun approach.
Are we talking about flavors or for health benefits?
I'm
or
talking about health benefits.
Health
So you've got a
benefits
measure-
primarily.
You've got a measurable outcome.
Okay.
Flavors are much more subtle, much more different uses. But if you're talking about an antioxidant for use in food versus use in health, those are 2 topics that you can have some standards to go against. Calcium absorption. These are targetable.
Well, sort of related to this, I mean, could some of these be sold as supplements with just claims as opposed to pharmaceuticals with clinical studies that require many more years and much more?
Well, I mean, you could still be producing them either way, but it feels like we're just sort of everybody, it's a wonderful way to get publications.
Oh, there's some businesses starting here too, though. So
Yeah, but are those businesses sustainable competitively over the long term? We're using a lot of resources to create short-term issues.
And I think that's definitely a potential outcome. But the companies that actually, I mean, it is tumbling or, running into something that works. And because there are so many combinations, I think that the only way, if you're going to get into the pharmaceutical market, the only way to really test it would be small scale with food, smaller trials, and then if it is something that could turn into something, then you put the billions of dollars and the FDA or EU regulations into place. So yes, there can be a lot of combinations. Is it a market where people have to compete? Yes, I agree.
I just want to add to it. I mean, I think there's a market for both. The market will actually decide, I think. Mm-hmm. Some people don't want to eat synthetic stuff. They want to eat natural stuff, so there's going to be a market for that. Then there's going to be a pharmaceutical market. So it's, I think both can coexist. So.
And, you know, whether there are trusted studies for some of these supplements, that's questionable as well. A lot of times they refer to older studies. They're studies that their company has not funded. But I think, as I was speaking of in regards to regulations, with the new regulations out for new dietary ingredients, for self-affirmed or GRAS ingredients, the FDA is going to be looking more at what's being marketed out there and if it is safe, number one, but maybe look further into, okay, is this as efficacious as you say it is with your claims?
These biohackers, is that what you called them?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't term it. I
Yeah.
can't get credit for that.
I think there's many people that are not so dedicated biohackers, but everyone today is starting to self-medicate.
Yes.
And that's why broadening. And so as people get good or bad information and they get a tip from a friend, you know, a testimonial, they're going to the general health store or whatever and buying this supplement, that supplement, that supplement. Whereas to go to the doctor, you know, and ask for a specific thing that's been clinically approved and he has to prescribe it, this is something they can do. So I go back to what you're saying. I think there is a market for both. The self-medicators can go do all these types of things. Now, I would ask that as you look at this whole market, do you see that the value of a fish, let's pick a fish, the value of a fish in the future will be, the greater value will come from the byproducts than it's coming from the meat right now? Has anyone really thought this through very much?
Well, everybody's going to need to eat their fish, their protein. From a value-added perspective, there is more money to be had from these value-added ingredients. 10 years from now, are we going to be eating insects instead of fish? I don't think that will happen, but just as a extreme example, I would say it's hard to tell, but the value definitely does come from the byproducts.
But you're also putting more money into them. So again, the way you evaluate it
Exactly.
is going to have to be more sophisticated based on, it, you know, making hydrolysates, you've got to buy the enzymes, you've got to fractionate. Your raw material becomes only a small part of the cost.
Sure.
So you can't just say, oh, you've got $300 for this material, as you tried to show in the slide. But we
Right.
let you show it because I'd read you up. I set that all up. But seriously,
Yeah.
you can't, you're comparing apples and oranges.
Right. And I'm not saying it's necessarily going to be A to B.
You didn't say that.
Right. It's not a perfect world, and there are a lot of logistics. But if we look at the byproducts, we're always going to need fish meal. We're always going to need crude oil. But if we do want to do something with our waste, and people are going to be going hungry, then it's definitely a good place to go regarding how we can better, help people with their health.
I have a couple of questions. The first one, though, is to Hodor. I was really interested in saying that mackerel is invaded, if that's the right term. Does anybody in Iceland eat mackerel, or is it all export?
It's almost all export.
It's just unknown. It's just, yeah.
It's kind of like an insect.
Yeah. Well, hey, we're gonna start eating those soon. So what the heck? Okay. And the second one is I'm not too, but we're talking about the the peptides and all and some of the health benefits, this is ignorance, but if you ate the fish yourself, would you get this? I mean, can you get the health benefits from the peptides? What if I just eat the fish? Do I get the same benefits, or does it have to be extracted by an enzyme other than in my gut?
So there's been a lot more studies regarding whey, for instance, but when it comes to fish and increased bioactivity, there are some studies out there saying that if it's more broken down, hydrolysates, peptides, then ideally you should be able to assimilate it better. Are there enough studies out there to prove that? I wouldn't say definitively right now.
Yeah. Okay.
But as with whey,
Well, whey, there is no animal. What are you going to compare it to?
right. Well, they've
the
looked
whey
at
animal,
chicken and
I've never
beef.
had a whey animal.
But when you yeah,
Are they? Where do you get them?
yeah. But and when you look at those studies,
Yes.
you know, in sports nutrition, they've really dug deep regarding the effects. But when you look at the different meat sources and how they're treated and broken down and different assimilations, there's still so many questions.
Yeah.
But if you look at a potato, if you bake it, if you boil it, if you put it in the microwave, you know, obviously everyone knows or has somewhat idea, okay, well, maybe if I have glucose problems, I'm not going to cook my potato that way. So that's another aspect, is how you cook it. Does that make a difference as well?
But you're not from the South because the first choice is fried. Come on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to what he was saying. When we fillet the fish, for instance, you throw away the skin, and then you consume collagen separately as a for skin benefits. So that's another issue. But yeah, so you're getting indirectly. Generally, that's another issue with the way we consume fish. We fillet the fish and throw away the most nutritional part.
I like the
Where
skin,
all
by
the
the way.
omega-3s are. We just
Yeah.
throw it in the garbage, and of course we're recovering it another way and bring it back, and we're consuming the fish oil in capsule forms instead of you taking the fish and actually cooking it as a whole fish and getting the whole nutritional benefits of it. So that's one way.
On the omega-3s, most of the experts still say you're better off getting this fish. The question of hydrolysates gets a little more complicated, because you've also got each of our stomachs and micro are now different, so how much hydrolysate we get and how much these hydrolysates really do go through the system and don't get further hydrolyzed is
Sure.
all a very complicated
Sure.
issue.
And another example is probiotics. One probiotic works better for one individual over the other. So, I mean, it really comes down to research. And that's the exciting thing about all of these natural ingredients and where we're headed in the future, not just in the seafood or marine ingredient industry.
These are not natural ingredients, they're man-made, and that we perceive that way by humans.
Probiotics? Is that what you meant?
The issue of what is natural is
Yes,
that FDA is
I
trying-
agree. Quote. There's quotes around that.
I have come up with a very simple definition. Wild is natural, everything else is domesticated, including our microbes.
Well, right now, too.
You know, in thinking about this, I'm thinking about crude oil, and we think of immediately gasoline or fuel. And yet, if you look at the value of crude oil, a lot of it, maybe most of it, comes from not the fuel, but comes from the plastics, the fabrics, the pharmaceuticals, the cosmetics. And so maybe we're looking at fish the wrong way, and so this is a way to start looking at it. We always call these things waste products, and maybe most of these startup companies are getting them practically free now because they're providing a service. I don't know to what extent they're paying back to the fishery, but nonetheless, they're increasing the bioeconomy of the country they're in or where they're utilized. And so if we start thinking about ultimately what is a fish worth, it may be worth a whole lot more than we realize because we're still at just making gasoline and not doing enough on the other stuff.
We don't use the word waste product, that's why we use byproduct.
Right. It's byproducts, correct.
I think
Use
I've,
the vocabulary correct, Tyrese.
I
They
think I've
still view
also
it that
heard
way,
rest
mostly,
raw
though.
material.
They still view it that way.
I think.
Other comments, questions? Hey, we're on time. Dave, you got some